reminded you, this is actually probably one of the most censored books in the Bible. And that's not even by like outside world. That's like by Christian fathers, like in the early church. They sat there and said, "Oh, I don't know if we should put this in the Bible." Like when they were coming through the canon of Scripture, I mean, this is too racy. Surely God's not this racy with romance. And so then they tried to turn it into, well, this is an allegory between Christ and the church, and they're trying to rationalize it. But as you're going through it, it becomes very, very obvious. It's hard when you see some of this racy stuff to say, that's Jesus in the church? I mean, that's a little, and you can see their struggle there. But we've been looking at it from a practical sense, and I've tried to do it that way because I want us to see a flow of romance through this scripture so that we're coming up with more of a biblical thinking. There's a lot of people out there that are searching for romance and love. And if you're married this morning, teenagers, I can promise you this, that some of these older folks that are around here, as they're hearing some of this stuff, they're saying, you need to pay attention to this stuff. It will save you from heartbreak. Okay? And so I'm glad that our young people are here. I'm glad that we've got some that are here that are listening and paying attention. And hopefully this is practical. We began the book and we saw that there was an attraction between this young couple. She's attracted to him, he's attracted to her. But what makes the attraction so great is not based on whether the guy is hot and ripped and all that fun stuff. It's his character, okay? Character is a big thing. And he is attracted to her because of her character. It's not because she's hot, okay? There are good-looking women and that are good girls, and there are good-looking women that are man-eating floozies, okay? You got to be a judge of character. There are good-looking men, and there are good-looking men that are scumbags. So you better be careful and watch the character of the person. Last week, they moved from the attraction stage into what we might call the dating stage, okay? And in that, one of the things that we saw, what gets a lot of young people into trouble, is they did not isolate themselves. They were out in the open, okay? They saw he had his companions around him. Listen, you get alone, you will start a fire that is hard to put out. And then we looked at it, and I had an illustration of a rose. One of the things that we see often in our culture is people give themselves away, because here's the thing, with every date that you are going on, the ultimate goal is intimacy. And intimacy has 3 levels to it. There is a spiritual level to it, there is a emotional level, and then there is a physical level. And so we have to be very, very careful. And what happens is this, in our world, it distorts, and we decide we need to push the gas pedal down and get to the physical because we've equated the physical intimacy with love. But there is a spiritual level and there is an emotional level, and we have to look at it from that standpoint. Otherwise, we're leading young people down shattered lives. Down roads to shattered lives. And the reminder is this, and this is what we ended with last week, where love is said, do not awaken love till it's ready. Okay? In other words, love is something that naturally blossoms. It's not manipulative. It's not coercive. It doesn't exploit. It is something that, when it's right, it does not need to be forced. There are some times that we think we have to force love. Okay? And the truth of the matter is you do not have to force love. It naturally takes place. Now, the next phase of the relationship, and I hope you're seeing, we went from attraction to dating. Now we're going to go into the next level here. And if you look at it, we're going to use an old-fashioned term. And young people, let me say this. Old-fashioned doesn't mean bad all the time. Okay? I know there are certain times you hear things and you're like, oh, that's old-fashioned. Look at the world you're living in right now. Sometimes old-fashioned is good. Okay? There are things that are still good. And the word and the idea that we're going to talk about is the courtship. The courtship. Okay? What courtship is on its most basic level is it is the intentional and purpose-filled dating. Okay? There is a moment where you're dating and you're moving past the appetizers and the hamburgers, and now you're moving to the relationship itself. Where are we going? And that is the thing. With our kids, with Sarah and I will tell you what we have taught our kids. Okay? We have taught Susie, Jack, Johanna, and hey, watch out. Jack got his license this week. He finally decided to get his license. And so he's out on the roads. Be careful. Okay? Susie is she's been going for a while now. She thinks her car is her race car. And so we'll let Johnny pull her over and it'll all be good. And so, no, I'm kidding. She's good. But one of the things we have told Susie, Jack, and Johanna is coming up the pike, and then Jonathan's coming up the pike, is one of the things that we have taught them is be careful who you date. Be careful who you date, because everyone that you go out with has the potential to be your spouse. You say, wait, that's kind of, man, you're ruining their teen years and stuff like that. No, I mean, we need to think about it. You say, why have you guys emphasized be careful who you date, because they could wind up being your spouse? Well, you don't live in an arranged marriage world. Okay? And so what happens is this, because you don't live in an arranged marriage world, you got to be careful who you're going out with, because every person you go out with has the potential to be your spouse. And so what that does is it allows them to be a little bit more selective. So they're not wasting their time. Okay? They're allowed to process things. But not only that, bigger than that, we want our children to see that there is a purpose behind dating. Parents, you need to understand there has to be a purpose behind your child's dating, okay? When you do enough counseling of marriages like I have, and teenagers who have messed up physically, one of the things you wind up doing is you rethink your paradigm on how you handle dating and all that stuff. Because after all, I'm just saying what we're doing in America right now ain't working. For over half of marriages to end in divorce, we're not doing something right. And that's why I love being able to go through this from a practical standpoint, because you're getting some foundation, not rooted in Nate's ideology, but you're getting a pattern from Scripture that God actually does have a plan for romance. Okay? So let's begin and pick up where our couple is this morning. I'm going to read verse 8 and 9, and then we'll talk about it, and we'll just work through the text. He says this in verse 8, "The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Behold, he stands behind our wall. He is looking through the windows, gazing through the lattice." Now, when we left off, where were they? They were out in the open field, and somewhere along the line, he says, hey, listen, she's ready to give herself away physically to him, and he's saying, hey, now is not the right time. He's a man of character. He's not going to exploit that. And so she sits there, and there's kind of a separation, and so now here he comes. In the old term, if you've watched old movies, he comes calling for her. Okay? Here he comes calling for her, and she hears his voice, and she gets excited. Here he comes. Now, you and I understand something about girls and boys. Remember back in the 90s, if you watched Oprah and all that weird stuff, there was a big popular book that came out. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Some of you remember that. What was that? The whole emphasis of that whole book is what? Men think differently than women. Right? You've been married long enough, you find out we think differently. We process things a whole lot differently. Boys and girls, I'm going to tell you something about boys here. Okay, I'm going to give you a little insight. If he has a date with you, he ain't thinking about it all day long until it's time. Okay? I don't mean to crush your feelings here. He's hanging with his buddies all day long. They could be out mudding, they could be out hunting, they could be out doing whatever. And then one of his buddies is going to say, oh, by the way, don't you have a date here in a little bit with so-and-so? And he'll be like, oh, yeah. And then he'll go home, and he'll look through his room, and there's clothes on his floor. And he'll say, okay, that one doesn't look wrinkled. And he'll put those on, and he'll put his shirt on. He might shower and put on deodorant, but he'll sit there and say, if I don't have time, I'll just spray myself with cologne. And then he's on his way. That is a man. Sorry to disappoint you. That's the level of thinking he's going through. Girls, on the other hand, are different. I'm learning this. I have an almost 20-year-old daughter and an almost 15-year-old daughter. They're thinking about this stuff. Okay, do these jeans make my hind end look big? Does my hair and my makeup look chopped? And they're going through all this stuff. And I'm like, who cares? And they're like, but we do. It's a process for a girl. And so here she is. She's sitting there, and all of a sudden, here he comes, and I hear his voice. It's so wonderful. And there's an eagerness about him. It says he's leaping through. He's excited to come see her. And she hears his voice, and she says, he's eager to see me, and all this stuff. He's passed the sniff test. He's put cologne on, and he's all good. But then the Bible says he's peering through the lattice in the windows. And some of us in today's world are sitting there going, okay, is this guy a creeper? What does it mean he's looking through her windows in the lattice, trying to catch a glimpse? Or like, are we calling the cops here? Because for a peeping Tom, what's going on? You have to remember, Song of Solomon is written in poetic language. It's poetry. Okay? And as it is written in poetry, what is being talked about in a poetic sense is this. Not that he is being a peeping Tom creeper. The idea of the window and the lattice in poetic language means this, that he was respecting the boundaries. He was respecting her family's boundaries. He wasn't forcing himself into the situation. But he was saying, okay, I see the boundaries of the lattice, the wall, the windows, all this stuff, and I'm going to hang back and not force myself in. I'm going to respect that. Why am I saying that? Young people, you need to know something. As your relationship progresses, single folks, as your relationship progresses, there's going to come a point where you are going to have to set down clear boundaries. These are the rules of engagement. This is where we're going. This is not where and it is going to require a real conversation. It is not something you can wait till you're in the moment to start coming up with a plan. Okay? This requires real conversations. Are we going to be exclusive? Girls, can I give you an insight? And all the boys will appreciate this right here. If you're not interested, just say, I'm not interested. Just say no. Now, it may wound his pride at first. He will get over it. I promise you. It is better just to say no. Do not play games with him. 1 minute you're hot, 1 minute you're cold. Men are very simple. I told you. We wait till like 15 minutes before we get the date to get ready. Okay? But I'm telling you right now, just keep it simple. I'm not interested at this moment. It might hurt him at first, but guess what? He can respect that. Now is not the time. Okay? And so you move on and you're doing your thing. But here's the thing. Are we going to be exclusive? Guys, you may sit there, and here's the thing. You may be reading signals that she ain't sending that you think she's sending, and she's saying, no, I'm not that interested in you. And vice versa. That's why you have to have a clear conversation. What are the boundaries of this relationship? Not only that, how far are we going to go with our what are the boundaries going to be with our physical relationship? I once heard a pastor who had a checkered past with his sexual immorality before he got married and stuff, and he said, I was basically I always needed somebody. I always needed a relationship with somebody. And he said, what I learned was this: if I start down one road, I know where it's going to end. And so when it came time for him to date his wife and then start courting his wife, what wound up happening is this. He said, early on, he said, I was wrestling with it. I prayed about it. But then the next day I said, we cannot date, or if we're going to date in our physical relationship, we're not even going to kiss. Because I've been down that road and I know where it leads to, and we're going to set up the clear boundaries. And she said, I'm so glad you said that because I was thinking the same thing. It's okay to have those boundaries on your physical contact, and that requires a conversation. You know, you got to, once again, we're sitting there and we're saying there's got to be a better way than what we're doing right now. Can I say this? There is another, and when I've talked to teenagers in the past about sexual activity, the stupidest question that any teenager is going to ask, and single or college student is going to ask, is this: how far is too far? That is a dumb question. You know why? You're setting yourself up for failure. The minute you start saying, how far is too far, you're saying, how close to the ledge can I walk without falling over? The better question is this: how close to Jesus can I run? If I'm a Christian, how close to Jesus can I get and walk and talk and be, so that when temptation comes my way, I'm looking to Jesus, not sitting there saying, how far is too far? Because I guarantee you this: you've walked the fence long enough, you're going to lose your balance at some point. As you get older, the temptation is this: well, I got to test drive before I buy. Or we got to move in together. Can I encourage you, don't do that. That is setting yourself up for failure. Now, I understand that people always point to, well, what about this couple and what about that? Understand something. They are the exception, not the rule. We always like to hinge our stuff on the exceptions, not the rule. Did you know this statistically? And this isn't even Christian statistics. This is stuff from like Pew Research and everything. But understand this: people who cohabitate together before marriage are 38% more likely to end in divorce. 50% more likely to divorce within the first 10 years. Not only that, they're more likely to have children outside of wedlock, which opens up a whole new Pandora's box. Because now you have kids who didn't ask to be born, who are now living in a situation where we're trying to play family, but there is no covenant or anything of that nature. So one day when dad gets a vibe toward another girl, hey, there's no ring, there's no commitment here, I just go off. And now you have single moms trying to raise a kid. You don't believe me? Go into the school system and you're going to see this. I can't tell you the number of times, Sarah through the years has had to deal with this, and I've seen it, and it does put a strain on society. Because as Charlie Kirk posted and would talk about, you know, one of the surest ways to stay in poverty is to have children outside of wedlock. And this is why he encouraged the family so much, and the idea of the family so much, and that maybe God actually knew what he was talking about. What am I saying, though? I say this: establish clear boundaries. In your marriage, you need clear boundaries. Okay? If you know it makes your wife uncomfortable, don't do it. If it makes your husband uncomfortable, don't do it. You guys are supposed to be submitted to one another. So keep that in mind. Here's the second thing, verse 10 through 14. My beloved spoke and said to me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past. The rain is over and gone, and the flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grapes give a good smell. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. O my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the secret places of the cliff, let me see your face, let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. What's going on here is he is going to see her, and now he is going to transition the relationship. And this would be my second point. The first one is this, that there has to be clear boundaries. But secondly is this, there has to be intentionality. There has to be intentionality. What do I mean by this? I had a professor in Bible college who said it like this: if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. If you are aiming at nothing, you are guaranteed to succeed. Okay? Every dating couple should ask this question: for what purpose are we dating? Why are we dating? Why are we going out with one another? Because I can tell you this, if we're dating just because we feel we need a relationship, or because it's cool and it is the thing to do because everyone else is dating, remember my illustration early in the series. Love is one of those things where everyone who's on the outside, it's like flies. Everyone on the inside wants out, and everyone on the outside wants in. Okay? This is why you got to be very, very careful. There has to be an intentionality here. But if you and I are dating, well, I'm not dating yet right now. I'm married. Well, I'm still dating my wife. Good. Okay? Here's the thing. If you're in that dating relationship, there has to be a purpose behind why you're dating. Because I promise you this. If you're dating with no end in sight, with no end game, you will wind up giving a piece of yourself in failure, and you're going to give a piece of yourself away, and heartache is going to take place. Talk to a number of the adults in here, and they will affirm what I'm telling you. Because some of them have been there. Dating with no end game is a recipe for failure. And may I say this, because a lot of you that may be married in here, you're a parent, you're a grandparent, and you're sitting there saying, well, what does this have to do with me? I've got a ring, I'm married, but you still have kids, and you still have grandkids. And that is called discipleship and biblical counseling. It is okay for you as a parent and a grandparent, as your kid and grandchild is sitting there saying, I think I want to date so-and-so, and I think I want to date this person, for you to ask the question, for what purpose? That's a fair game question if you're an involved parent. What purpose? Why do you want to date them? Oh, they're so hot, you don't even know. He has washboard abs. No, I'm not picking on any of my kids, okay? I promise you. She is hot. She is this. She is, everything. She gives me the post-nasal drip every time I look at her. Like, it's got to be more than that. Okay? Because if you're just dating because they're hot, guess what? One day, 30 years later, they may be hot now, but one day they're not. Okay? Looks deceive. Okay? Beauty fades. Okay? And so what happens is this. You have to be able to ask, why do you want to date them? What is your end game? If you're a boy and you come calling on one of my daughters, first of all, I'm going to say this because I got to get this out of the way. Do not sit in your car and honk the horn. You do that, I will physically tell my daughter, okay, your date's over. He needs to man up and come knock on the door and come get you. Okay? We need to conversate. We need to talk. I want to make sure he's a good fellow. I don't care how hot he is. I know. He probably picked that outfit out 15 minutes ago. All right? Do not sit there and honk the horn. Come get her. I totally forgot where I was going with that. Here's what I'm saying, though. There has to be an intentional factor to your dating. Don't just come in like thugonomics and think that you're just going to pick up my daughter or any other person's daughter. Okay? There has to be. What are your intentions with my daughter? Young man, what are your intentions with my daughter? Okay, where are we going? And what time are we going to be back? I mean, there's got to be some clear set boundaries here. You're not just going to go out and drive around. I know how that goes. Like, I'm a former athlete, and I know how boys are. I know what gets talked about in the locker room. Okay? So I need some clear, because you ain't the man in her life right now. I am. I'm her protector. And so I need to know what your intentions are. And there's going to be a process where you move past the appetizers and the hamburgers and stuff like that eventually the conversation is going to have to be, okay, so what are the intentions here? He is intentional. And notice who is leading the conversation in the intentions. It ain't her. Verse 10, it says, my beloved spoke. It is the man. Let me say this. He is not a passive man. There is something in our culture that has taught us that men are toxic. Masculinity is toxic. That is a lie from the pit of hell to weaken men. Now, I'm not sitting here saying you need to be a barbaric caveman. Your wife or your girlfriend is not your slave. You are not to lord over her, but you are to lead her. You are to lead her, and that requires not being passive. That's why most men they're quick to defer. Oh, my wife, that spiritual stuff, I'll let her handle that. And they defer. He is not a passive man. He is pursuing after her. He is engaging the conversation. He is respecting the boundaries. Ladies, you do not want a man who defers. You want a man who will man up and cowboy up. He's stepping outside. If a man is deferring all the time and he's being weak, you know what? He's stepping outside the way God designed it. You need a man who will step up and not be passive. He is leading the conversation. He says, winter is past. The time of singing has come. Poetically, what he's saying is let's move into the next area of the relationship. It's time to get serious. He's establishing the clear boundaries. He's working to an end game. And the end game ain't sex. It's marriage. He says, join me. What he's doing is essentially saying, join me in the journey of life. Can I say, when the relationship hits this point, with this type of clarity, the engagement period does not take long. Okay? I'm going to give you something. Sarah, first of all, Sarah was the only true girlfriend I ever had. I've only had one true girlfriend, and that was Sarah. Okay? I might have gone out a couple times with others, but it didn't last more than 2 or 3 dates. Sarah was the only one. We started dating. I met her in August. We went on a couple dates starting in October, the end of October. First one was to the Jaguars-Chiefs game. Okay? We got to know each other, and then by March, we were engaged, and by July, we were married, less than a year. And this year, we will be 21 years married. It does not take a long period of time when you both know what you're after. And when there are clear directions. Okay? This is what's going on. It is clear directions. It will not take long. And boys, if you are not willing to lead, you are not ready for a relationship. If you're sitting there going, hey, come here. You call your buddies over. Hey, go talk to her friends and think what. No, dude, you got to put yourself out on the line. If she shoots you down, she shoots you down. But man up and go. Don't play this little game of, well, what did her friends say? Does she like me? Like, dude, you're trying to run recon before you go in for war. Don't do that. Man up and go ask her. Don't be coy. And girls, once again, if you ain't interested, just say no. Don't play games with him. Now, he's leading the conversation. Verse 13 and 14, there is a sense of vulnerability that when it's talking about the doves and the cleft, and there's a sense where you both are going to have to become vulnerable with each other and talk about things, even uncomfortable things. But here's where it starts changing. Verse 15. As they're having this conversation, catch us the foxes, little foxes that spoil the vines. Our vines have tender grapes. Now, what in tarnations is that? Some say it's her talking. Some say it's her brothers are talking, depending on what subheading you have in your Bible. I'll tell you this is the hard questions that are being asked. What is the hard question? You have to understand, during this time period, foxes were seen as little pests. They seem a little innocent. You see a fox running around, you're like, oh, that's cute, till it gets in your chicken coop. Then it ain't cute no more. Foxes would go in and they would destroy the crops in the vineyard. They were little things that looked innocent and looked like, oh, they're just so cute, but then they would leave damage behind. And what is being said here by either her brothers or herself is she's looking at this young man who is coming and saying, let's move to the next relationship because the end goal here is marriage. And she's turning in, or her brothers are turning it back on her or him and saying this: what little things seem innocent in your life that can destroy our marriage? That's what's being said. So what is going on here is this: what are the little things? And listen, girls, I will tell you this: your peer group will pick up on things about a guy and say, you might want to watch that one. He's kind of loose with his temper. Boys, sometimes your friends will pick up on things and say, hey, you need to watch this. She's she's not a good person. I see she says she's dating you. I see her running around with all these other guys. You need to listen to them. What are the little foxes? I'll tell you, there are things in your life. Men are conquest driven, okay? And I don't mean this with any disrespect, ladies, but a man is thinking conquest. So once he puts a ring on it and you've hit the covenant thing, he thinks, okay, well, I got what I wanted. So now, let's go back to being me. And here you are. Now, here's what happens. He's hanging out with his buddies all the time while you have 4 kids strapped to you. And you're at home saying, now I'm stuck with this the rest of my life. The little foxes. Watch out for the little foxes. What are some of those little foxes? Well, he doesn't really pay attention. He's not a good listener. And all the conversations are about himself. Whenever you talk, all he does is talk about, he is the greatest person in the world. All you got to do is ask him. He's probably the smartest guy in the room. Just talk to him and ask him. He likes to cut you off and interrupt you. If he's doing that while you're dating, once again, ladies, understand something. While you're dating is the best you're going to see him. Okay? After that, you're going to see who the real him is. Okay? So you better get to know him. Be willing to ask, what are the little foxes in your life? He could be a mama's boy. What is a mama's boy? He's very passive, and when things go wrong, he runs back to mommy and daddy. Can I tell you something? Raising two hopefully godly women, which they're on that course, and I love my daughters. That is, talking with them and having these, that is one of the biggest turn-offs to a girl, listening to them. If something comes up, they run to their parents instead of handling it like a man. They said that's just an ick. Is he a mama's boy? Is he not a good listener or communicator? Is he highly critical of everyone but himself? Does he insult people, including you? He's good for a good joke, even if it's at your expense. You know, the old ball and chain. If he's doing that while you're dating, it's going to be elevated once you're married. Is he distracted with technology? If you're on a date and he's on his phone all the time, he's living in an alternate world. And you ain't at the center of it. Little foxes. And so through that, verse 16 and 17, she gets all that resolved. But then we come to chapter 3, and we'll finish up in chapter 3, verse 1 through 5. But he says, by night, she's sitting there talking to herself. By night on my bed, I sought the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. I will rise now, I said, and go about the city, in the streets and in the squares. I will seek the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. The watchmen who go out about the city found me, and I said, have you seen the one I love? Scarcely I had passed by them, and when I found the one I love, I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him to the house of my mother and into the chamber of her who conceived me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. So here's the final thing I want us to see as this relationship progresses. There's clear boundaries, there's intentionality, and then there is a courtship leads to longing, where she can't see her life without him. You're going to hit the point in the relationship where you're like, I can't do life without you. She longs for him. There is a separation here, and in her mind, she's sitting there saying, I don't know how I can live without you. That's how I feel whenever I travel. Whenever Sarah, like I'll roll over, and if Sarah's not in the bed, it's awkward. It's awkward. I don't feel like I am complete when I'm on the road. Because she is part of me. I can't do life without my Sarah. Where I am weak, she is strong, and hopefully where she is weak, I am strong. And we complete one another. And I cannot imagine doing life without her. I can't imagine doing ministry without her. I can't imagine anything without her. Do you feel the same way about your spouse? In fact, it is elevated to so much she is ready to bring him home to mama. Remember that point in the relationship? Come meet my parent. She's at that point, I'm bringing you home to mama. Notice the father is not mentioned, which is a good indicator daddy's dead. Okay? That's why her brothers are kind of overseeing her. But I want you to see something. In all of this, you see his character on display. In verse 5, or going into verse 5, it talks about how she sits there and says, I'm ready to take you to the bedroom for which I was conceived. That is very graphic language for something. She is ready to physically give herself away again. And his character, once again, sits there because he has clear boundaries. He's being intentional. And instead of exploiting it, it goes back to this. That's nice and all, but now is not the right time. Why? Here's the thing. Sex was created by God. But it was created for the purpose of being enjoyed in the covenant relationship called marriage. And so he's sitting there saying, now, while I'm excited that you're excited about this, now is not the right time. This is a man of character. He's sitting there saying, well, I know you're, and there's a lot of guys out there that, man, if a girl's doing, oh, let's do it. Not this man. He's a man. He's not a boy. A boy will sit there and say, okay. But a man sits there and says, no, I will not go down this path. It is not the right time. So what does it all mean? What is our takeaway this morning? You live and I live in a careless world. And the result of that is we have left shattered lives. And out of that, when I point out some of these statistics, I'm not doing it to bash people. I really am not. I'm saying let's have a real conversation here about where the state of people are, and what we're doing just ain't working. And so there has to be something better. God has to have a better way of doing things. And what you're seeing, I believe, and I was thinking about this morning as I was rehearsing and going over my message. I was like, you know what? When you look at it through God's eyes, this whole dating thing and this whole relationship, he actually the standards are elevated. We're not just giving ourselves away to every person like animals. And what we're doing is we're sitting there saying there is intentionality, there is selectiveness, and that's why if we'll do it God's way, there's probably going to be a greater success rate than doing what every relationship person has told us. And what's wild to me is how many marriage counselors, this is what's funny to me. How many marriage counselors do you see on TV? And then when you ask them, how many times have you been married? Oh, I've been married 5 times. Once again, I'm not saying that to bash. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying God has a plan. And if we'll stick to the plan, we might increase our chance of success. And once again, I understand. Here's the thing I understand. People have broken lives. But that's where God's grace comes in. And what do you do when you've already lived a broken and have a checkered past? You live in His grace and just commit your ways to Him and do it one day at a time. You submit yourselves to Him and live one day at a time and say, okay, Lord, I may have done it this way in the past, but you know what? I want to honor you in my relationships now. I want to do it the way you want things done. I'm going to establish some boundaries. Once again, you cannot establish boundaries when you're in the throes of heated passion. It doesn't work like that. You have to be like Daniel and purpose in your heart that you're not going to defile God. And set those boundaries up clear and have an intentional conversation. And if you're a parent this morning, I would just encourage you. Talk to your kids. Be active in their life. If you're a dad, can I tell you something? Your daughters need their daddy. Okay? Your daughters need their daddy. Who will protect them, who will sit there and say, get that pajama-wearing, weed-smoking hippie off my front lawn. You're better than that. You're better than that. And value her and show her. If you have to, go out to lunch with her. That's one of the things Susie and I have been doing. Like everyone, hey, Dad, can we go do that? Yeah, we're going to do it. And we'll go. And then she'll say, can we eat lunch together? Yeah. What is the point of that? I want my daughters to know that they have access to their daddy. Does that mean I am the perfect father? No. I'm a flawed man. Okay, we all are. As dads, show your son what it is and how it is to treat a woman. Not in a barbaric way, but say, hey, son, I tell you this, once again, you come honking on my door or honking your car at my door and I know your family, I'm calling your parents. I'm going to say, did you teach your son to honk horns when they go to pick up a girl? And I guarantee you, boys, if that's the case, your dad is probably going to light into you. And then your mom's going to have her turn. Okay? Be respectful. Respect the boundaries. Teach your sons how to respect boundaries. And in the process of it, let's not be careless in teaching our kids. Oh, just date whoever because they're hot and they can provide a lot of money. Teach them to look for character. Teach them they need somebody. And teach them that God has a plan, but we don't date just to date, because that's when we wind up in trouble. Okay? With every head bowed and every eye closed, we're not going to do an invitation as such. All we're going to do today, because I understand this is not your typical, this series is not your typical salvation altar call series, but it is something that I would sit there. We're going to Karen. I'm going to pray. Karen is going to play. Can I ask you, if you're a parent or a grandparent, just pray for your grandkids. And if you have kids that are single, pray for them. And just be the disciple and biblical counselor in their life. Because they're being bombarded. And I say something that I said the first week. if you're not willing to talk about it, if we as a church are not willing to talk about it, someone else will teach them. And it'll probably be some joker from TikTok. Okay? Teaching them how to have a relationship. I don't want some influencer who's a scumbag, who's just doing it to get money from the amount of watches and views that they have, trying to tell my kids and eventually my grandkids what a relationship looks like. What am I doing? I'm putting the emphasis and the discipleship back on you as the parents and as the home. Father, I come before you this morning, and I ask that you would use our conversations and our message this morning to provoke a conversation in our homes. Help us to guide our kids to a better path. Help these teenagers and these young people to find a better way of doing things, a godly way of doing things, not just doing things just for the sake of, well, I want to be cool and everyone else has help them to see that, you know what, there is an end game. There is a intentionality about this that needs to be taken with a little bit of a seriousness. Lord, we want to have healthy romances. Not like Lady Gaga sings and have a bad romance. We want healthy romance. We want godly romance. And so I pray that you would help us, help our young people, and help us as parents to guide them in wisdom. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to ask you to stand. Like I said, Karen is only going to play through one verse this morning. And during this one verse, I just want you to pray for your kids and those around you, that as they're navigating this relationship world, maybe it's your grandkids, maybe it's singles that you know that are close and dear to you, pray for them. Pray for your children, that God will protect them and put godly pray for them to have godly spouses.